Today I'm going to speak about my first home experience back in July 2021, all the upside and all the stresses that came along with it and all the mistakes I made to ensure that you don't make the same mistakes too. Again, this video is general information only and not financial advice. No deposits should be placed on a property given the information provided in this video. All right, let's get into the story. So I remember the year was 2020 when I wanted to purchase my first home. At the start of the year in March, COVID happened, so we couldn't go about getting a pre-approval. We'll let out of lockdown in June. Now, in June, my mum and I went to Western Sydney and we looked at a property in Hoxton Park area. Now, it was a really nice home in a cul-de-sac, 3-bedroom, decent square meters of land. And that was the first step for me, was actually going in there and looking at the property and saying, this is where I want to invest in, this is what I want to buy. Now, the property sold for $647,000. And at that point, it was my duty to go to my broker at the time and get a borrowing capacity. Now, when I went to see my broker at the time, these were the conditions I had back in 2020. So I was on $65,000 a year in salary, had a HEX debt, single with no dependents or no kids. Interest rates were about 1 to 2%, and I had about $60,000 in savings. Now, if you can guess my borrowing capacity, it was well off the first home I actually was looking at. My max borrowing capacity was $420,000 with a max purchase price of $480,000. Now, I was stumped when I heard that borrowing capacity and I didn't understand why it was that low. The first lesson I learned was don't go out to open homes until you have your pre-approval or budget sorted at the very least. Now, this would have saved me heaps of open homes on Saturdays, but I was looking in areas that were well out of my budget, almost $200,000 out of my budget. So I had to change my whole strategy again. So I decided to get my pre-approval in late 2020, and I moved my strategy from houses in closer to Western Sydney, that Liverpool area, to now Mount Druitt, St. Mary's. By the end of November, December 2020, all these houses were going circa 500K, so 20K, 30K, 50K, 100K more than my budget. And before Christmas, I think I said to myself, I'm not looking anymore, I'm done. We get to 2021, I would say about February, March at this point, where I decided to change my strategy and actually go ahead and start looking at properties. This is common from a first home buyer cycle. After not finding properties in their budget, people usually just offload this and they wait another year or 6 months or 9 months. Now we get to March 2021 where I decided to change my strategy and go from looking at houses in St. Mary's to townhouses in the Campbelltown area. Came across a 2-bedroom townhouse in Western Sydney and I felt that this was going to be a good starting point. It was advertised for $410K and we're going to make an offer for $420,000. Now, the agent requested that I sign a 66W certificate in order to make the purchase or the offer accepted. Now, the second lesson I learned is not understanding the process of making an offer on a property. Now, this should have been done from either the broker or solicitor at the time, but no one really told me how to make an offer on a property. Private treaty, which is a private offer to an agent, and there's an auction. Now, at an auction, it's a public sale of a property. Now, if you win, you put down a 10% non-refundable deposit and you sign a 66W certificate, waiving your cooling off period rights. Now, the cooling off period is crucial, especially for first home buyers, as it safeguards your risk in a way. Now, when you go down a private offer on a property, you can put down a cooling off period, 5 or 10 days. And this ensures that you can pull out of the property in case any of the full risks happen. So 1, the valuation doesn't stack up with the contract. 2, the building and pest is not favorable. 3, the finance doesn't get approved. Or 4, the contract is not favorable to you as the buyer. So I was going to sign a 66W certificate, put down a 42 grand deposit for only a 10K upside in the offer. Now, to safeguard any risk, I should have gotten a cooling off period sorted. Should have gone back to my broker and asked that if this was going to be, if we could get the loan approved in this day, and then have made and finalized 10% offer later on once the cooling off period expires. Of course, get my loan approved in that period too. So I bypassed all of that. 75% of my savings gone into this property, and now it's time to get the approval. So this was like mid-June. We were 6-week settlement, would have been late July. So again, the third lesson I learned is not going back to your broker and getting that borrowing capacity updated and assessed. Now, what happened was I needed to provide an updated notice of assessment. If I told my broker I was making an offer on a property, he could have told me that this would have been required. Now, when you're in June, the financial year hasn't finished, so you have to wait until early July to get your notice of assessment. I already had made the offer on the property mid-June, so guess what? Couldn't get the approval. We had to wait until that period. So out of a 6-week settlement, we get to about week 5. and I still haven't gotten an approval. Finally, get the notice of assessment, get the updated bank statements, send it across. We had to ask for an extension on settlement. So we're going to run late for settlement. We needed another week. The valuation was done on the proposed settlement date. And luckily enough, the solicitor actually extended our settlement by a week. Fourth lesson I learned is make sure you have a broker that updates you on the process or that gives you urgency then when you need to provide documents or what the process is, because that's really crucial. Will really narrow down your stress. And something that we pride ourselves on here at VK Financial is updating you every step of the way so that you don't feel that stressful point like I did. On top of that, get yourself a good solicitor because they're going to help you with the contract of sales for making an offer on a property, educating you on that process, and then helping you with settlement. Now, luckily enough, my solicitor was able to get an extension. This is the last case or last resort, because if the vendor doesn't agree to it, then you have to pay penalty interest if you run late at settlement. Week later, we got the extension, got the keys to the property, and we moved in. So 4 years later, where does the property stack now? 4 years later, the property via realestate.com's estimated valuation is at $591,000, which is a $171,000 increase since our purchase 4 years ago. Now, I'm really happy with this purchase. The property is doing really well itself, and I can leverage this property later on, which I've explained in another YouTube video on my channel. Now, to finalize, there are going to be some roadblocks on the way, but ensure you have a good team around you, a good mortgage broker that updates you on the process if things go well and if things go wrong, but also provides you urgency if you need to provide documents ASAP, that they have that relationship with you that you can do so. On top of it, have a good solicitor that can go through the contract with you, ensuring that you're making the right decision and making you feel confident in your offer. And then if you need property buyers agents to help you on that process, by all means, feel free to use them. And of course, be in contact with real estate agents, because again, if they know you're a serious buyer, they're going to reach out to you to make an offer on a property. So hopefully this video helps. Feel free to click on our game plan call below, and we'll be happy to walk you through the process.